Hi there, good morning. It's my buddy again. So it's day 32 of this response to the COVID-19 crisis. So I'm our buddy, I'm a member of the Triratna Buddhist Order and based in Manchester. And so I've been kind of looking at friendship this week. And what we've done so far this week is on Tuesday, I kind of outlined a little bit of the life of the Buddha, and for those of you who don't know very much about who the Buddha was, and then I went into friendship and the Buddha's friendship with his attendant called Ananda, who was his cousin, who was with him for most of his teaching life. And then on the next day, we went to something called spiritual friendship, and so in Buddhism you have something called Kalyana Mitrata, which means Kalyana means something like the good or the beautiful. So it's a bit like you have a relationship, you try and develop like relationships with people that you admire, and you kind of want to emulate, you like the qualities that they have. We're all different, but yeah, it's just like that's what's really convincing to people, isn't sort of somebody saying something. It's more what they are, it's more what they embody. So we looked into spiritual friendship a bit, and then yesterday I looked into topic of making friends. So friendship is something that isn't kind of doesn't really work. If we just passive about it, if we think, just waiting for people to come along and be friends with us, so it's an active thing. And so it was Aristotle that came up with the idea that happiness is often associated with action, with us doing things. And I covered a little bit the idea of flow, that when we kind of we've got skills that we're using, and then we're challenged as well, and that those two things are held in a balance, then that's when we're most happy. We're kind of really engaged, we're doing something that we're good at, but there's an edge to it as well. So that was that was good to remember. And then today, I thought we'd look at friendship and society. The Buddhist movement that I'm a part of, and I've been a part of for about 32 years or something, began in the late 1960s in London, and was founded by Sangharakshita, who had been a monk out in India. He's an Englishman from Tooting, and he had been a monk out in India from the 1940s onwards to the 1960s, and he decided in the mid-60s he needed to start a new Buddhist movement that was kind of Western, that addressed a Western perspective, but which was also kind of true to the Buddhist tradition. And just by in a way trial and error, that movement started up very slowly in the 1960s, and he created what was called the Western Buddhist Order. And a few people started to get ordained in the 1970s, and now there's about 2,500 order members around the world. But what we're going to do today is look at some of the earlier days, and because what was emphasised in those days was community and friendship, and in a way there was a little bit of a critique of the society at the time, which was often about a bit materialist and orientated around the family and romantic relationships and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to try and explore some of that today, and I've got some really nice old journal. We used to have there used to be a newsletter called FWO newsletter, and there's some really nice old photographs of people from the very early days. So yeah, I hope that hopefully give you a sense of the mood back in that time and the excitement of building a new world in a way. There's the idea of setting up the nucleus of a new society. So so I'm just going to look into that a little bit, and also what there's a book called Men and Friendship by Stuart Miller, and some of what Stuart has to say about society really, and how it kind of works against friendship, or can work against friendship. So so that's what we have today. But I thought that trying to mix it up. Well, actually, I'll say a little bit about myself and what's been happening recently. So I have gone to being a Buddhist teacher who's supported on donations. So I've had a great response from you since I kind of announced that I was going to try and do that. So I've had about a week and a half's money coming already in a couple of days. So that's happened. I think yesterday, in terms of exemplifying what, how do you keep, the whole point of all these videos is to give people ideas on how to cope with the lockdown and COVID-19 and fears around that, And I think I've got slightly off balance a bit, but I had a chapter meeting yesterday, Buddhist chapter meeting, and I shared about what was happening and got some encouragement to get more exercise and get out into nature. So I did actually spend about 4 hours yesterday in Fletcher Moss Park, which is it's by the river. It's a really beautiful place, woods and everything. It's quite safe for social distancing and everything like that. So, but that really helped. This morning I got up earlier at 5:30 and I did a visualization meditation. So I contact me senses, sources of Buddhist inspiration of the Buddha of compassion. Avalokiteshvara is associated with the Bodhisattva of compassion. Padmasambhava is the figure that took Buddhism to Tibet. So all of that, and I did a thing called Guru Yoga. So it's like all of the sources of inspiration. My teacher Sangharakshita. I'm just trying to get a sense of the fact that I'm channeling something rather than being the source of it. So, and that is a much more healthy place to come from. And then this morning, and I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna carry on getting up early and doing that meditation before I do these sessions. I might end up getting up at 5. Dada Rinpoche used to get up at 4:30, so it's fine. If just have to go to bed a bit earlier. Yeah. What else is it? So it's there's something about setting up the right conditions for body, mind, inspiration, and kind of nature and things, and that if we get the balance right. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, so I had a bath and then I ran the water out and then ran the freezing water in and lay there for a bit, not too long, but until I just kind of shocked myself into waking up, and then I feel great for that, and it's a good way of, I think it's a really good way of, in a way it's kind of like getting a bit of exercise. If you have a bath and then you go freezing cold, then your muscles tense and relax, and it feels as if I've had some good exercise. So ideas for isolation, for staying in, that would help us keep sane. So this morning, I thought we'd mix it up a little bit again and do a lying down relaxation to start with, and then some meditation, and then go into the topic of the day. So basically, what you need is a pile of books. Something to lie on, like a mat on the floor. And then there'll be a pile of books about that thick. So just find something. I'll take your time and just find some books, find a mat, set a place to be. If you want to carry on lying in bed, it's better to have a firmer surface underneath you. But you could try that if you're really lazy. No, so I'll take that back. You could, but maybe you do need to have something hard under your head to support your head. So what we're gonna do is lay down with the head on the books, but not have our neck on the books. So that's quite important. So we begin by just kind of resting back onto your elbows. And then, so the idea with this is just to let the natural weight of your spine just kind of it helps your spine lengthen just under the weight of the spine, at the back. And maybe just put your thoughts somewhere else. So what we're doing at the moment, as with all body work, is we're just trying to work with our body, and that's the focus. And you can just allow your mind to be supported by your body, not the other way around. And just waiting, just wait. Just allow your mind to become softer. Might be an idea to think in terms of allowing your mind to become softer and receptive to what your body is doing. Imprinted in a way by what your body is doing. And just take a few gentle, deeper breaths. And then just very slowly and with care, just unfurl your spine slowly along the ground, and then just rest your head on the books, as I said before. Just adjust your head, not your neck. Maybe you need to adjust the position. Maybe push your books up slightly away from your body so that it gives your neck a little bit of a stretch. And then you can have your hands just on your hips, or on your ribs, or just on the floor. Whatever feels most appropriate to you. So I'm going to introduce some directions that comes from the Alexander technique. So these are just suggestions to make to yourself about what you'd like to happen with your body, but the point that Alexander made when he developed his technique is that, you know, when we're trying to do something like relax, the act of trying actually makes us tense up. You know, when we're trying to do something, like we kind of tense up in readiness. So he said, inhibit yourself from doing anything about it, but just have the idea in your head. You know, just having the idea in your head that the joint where your spine meets the top of your spine meets your head, which he said was the most important joint in the body. You know, may that joint be free to move. So while doing nothing about it, inhibiting yourself from doing anything, may that joint be free to move, so that your head can move away from your spine and maybe rotating slightly forwards, so that your neck can release and your back can become longer and wider. And then taking your attention down to your hip joints and your ankle joints and your knee joints. And just having the idea of making a suggestion to yourself, may those joints all be free to move without doing anything about it, so that my knees can rise up towards the ceiling with the minimum of effort. May my hip joints, ankle joints and knee joints all be free to move, so my knees can rise up towards the ceiling with the minimum of effort. And then imagine a line which runs between your right shoulder and your left knee. May the length of that line become longer. And imagine another line between your left shoulder and your right knee. May the length of that line become longer. And just coming back to that joint at the top of your spine, may that joint be free to move, So my head can move up and away from my body, from my spine. My neck can release and my back can become longer and wider. And feeling the hardness of the ground underneath you. Imagine a line between your two temples. And just having the thought, may the length of that line become longer. Being aware of your shoulders and having the thoughts, may my shoulder joints be free to move without doing anything about it. So my arms can extend away from my shoulders, lengthening. May my elbow joints be free to move. So my lower arms can move away from my elbows, becoming longer. May my wrists be free to move, so that my hands can move away from my wrists, lengthening. And may the joints in my fingers be free to move, so that my fingers can move away from my hands, becoming longer. And may my hips joints be free to move, so that my legs can extend away from my hips, lengthening. May my knees be free to move so that my lower legs can extend away from my knees, becoming longer. May my ankles be free to move so that my feet can extend away from my ankles, lengthening. It's just a thought, not doing anything about it. And may the joints in my toes be free to move so my toes can extend away from my feet, lengthening. So just giving the weight of your body to the ground, feeling the strong imprint of the ground on your body, pushing upwards on it, allowing it to flatten out. And letting go of your weight to the ground, letting everything go to ground, as it were. So now in a moment we're going to just roll onto one side, so just pick a side, right or left. And now just rolling onto that side, just resting your head on the books. I'm just going to allow the blood which was in our body, which has probably settled a bit in our back, to recirculate a bit more. A couple of minutes. Maybe take a few deeper breaths. So now just keep rolling in the same direction so that you end up on your hands and knees. Try to keep the relationship between your head, neck and back similar to what it was when you were lying down on the books. So you have a sense of your head moving away from your spine and rolling slightly forward. Again, just feeling the firmness of the ground underneath your hands and knees and feet. And then just walking your hand backwards so that you're sitting on your heels. And then just mindfully moving into your meditation posture. So you could be either sitting on a chair or firm chair or some firm cushions on the floor. Just sitting in a way that's comfortable. Okay. So just getting used to this new position and just remembering those directions. So at the top of your spine there, may that joint be free to move so that your head can rise upwards and tilting slightly forwards so that your neck can release and your back can become longer and wider while not doing anything about it. Inhibit yourself from doing anything about that. And imagining a line between your left shoulder and your right knee. May the length of that line become longer. And between your line between your right knee and left shoulder. So we're going to do the mindfulness of breathing practice. We're going to do 2 stages of it. So in the first stage, just watching your breath come and watching it go, and then counting at the end of the out breath. So breathe in, breathe out, count 1 in your head silently. Breathe in, breathe out, count 2. And just keep going like that till you get to 10. And then on the next breath, breathe in, breathe out, count 1. Breathe in, breathe out, count 2, and so on. And if you get lost, or you get onto 17, you've gone past 10, it doesn't matter, you just don't worry about it. You just start again with the next breath, and then count 1 at the end of that. And then in the second stage, we just move the counter, same counting, but we move it to just before the breath begins. So the mindfulness of breathing. So if it helps you, you can keep doing those directions. May my hip joints be free to move, so my legs can extend away from my hips, becoming longer. May my knee joints be free to move, so that my lower legs can extend away from my knees, lengthening. May my ankle joints be free to move, so that my feet can move away from my ankles, becoming longer. My joints and my toes be free to move, so that my toes can move away from my feet, lengthening. In the second stage of mindfulness breathing, just count just before the breath begins. Okay, just bring that meditation to a close in your own time. Okay, so on to today's topic, which is friendship and society. So maybe I'll start with a quote from this book, Men and Friendship, Stuart Miller. So he's talking about technology and modern society, really, and the effect that it has on us. So the reason I'm talking about this is that when we're trying to do anything, so the central teaching of the Buddha is that all things arise in dependence on conditions. So if we're trying to, if we're interested in friendship and trying to cultivate friendship, then we need to pay attention to the conditions that are going to support that. So here's a ancient Friends of the Western Buddhist Order newsletter from whenever it was. Spring 1983. And on it says, creating the context. So, and in there are things like yoga, morality, friendship, study, work, science, living abroad, taking Buddhism abroad, that was referring to. So it's like the context is really important if we're trying to do anything. In the central teaching of the Buddha was that for the Four Noble Truths. So the Four Noble Truths are that, first of all, life has suffering in it. It's inextricably linked to suffering. We can't avoid that. We can avoid it to some degree, but there's always going to be old age, sickness, and death, and things happening that we don't want. So life is suffering. First noble truth. Second noble truth is that the cause of suffering is attachment, craving, or attachment. So if we're attached to things, then we suffer when those things that if they are subject to decay, when they do decay, we suffer. So if we invest in things that are like that, then we suffer. The third noble truth is that it's possible to overcome suffering through attaining nirvana. So there's a way out of suffering. And then the fourth noble truth is that there's a particular path that leads to nirvana. So that's the Noble Eightfold Path. And one of the 8 limbs of that path is something called Samajiva, or right livelihood. But actually, the correct interpretation is that jiva just means life. So it's like the whole of your life, the way that your life supports whatever it is you're trying to do. So. So when Sangharakshita founded the Western Buddhist Order in the late 60s, and then the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order in the following year, the community of people around that, the centres and things like that. he created this. Here's a picture of the Sangharakshita in the middle there. Early order members. This is from where is it? Spring '78, and so basically you had a kind of group of young idealists, often ex-hippies, and Sangharakshita was sort of trying to think, well, what needs to happen here, and in terms of Buddhism, so he came up with the idea of the three C's. I know it's back to front. I'll put it right way around on YouTube. So what's the condition? How do you create a real Buddhist movement? There was a lot of focus put on people trying to transform the whole of their lives, like a whole situation, so people would live together, and then it was really good if they had projects to work on. So the London Buddhist Centre was the project to convert a fire station. Started in the 1970s and took a number of years really to complete. So here's a bit of from another newsletter, the new London Buddhist Centre, and it says, I'll read a bit to you. It says, it's now 3 months since 6 of us pulled the corrugated iron off a few windows, cleared enough dust and rubbish to lay down our mattresses, and began the work of preparing the old fire station in Bethnal Green for use as our new London Buddhist Centre. People who saw the building before work began say on visiting now that it actually looks worse than it did before, and in some respects this is true. Having made ourselves roughly comfortable on the top 2 floors, and having got rid of 60 cubic yards of rubbish accumulated in the 5 years the building has been derelict, we've been forced to strip out a lot of the walls and ceilings, remove some floors and joists, and generally to disturb apparently sound construction. The reason is we've discovered a widespread outbreak of dry rot. One corner of the building has been infected from top to bottom. Blah blah blah. It goes on like that. So you can see, and then it says the work takes place against the background of regular meditation and puja, which is devotional practice. Every morning there are 2 hours of meditation and walking and chanting, and every evening a short meditation and puja. 1 day a week there is a retreat, more meditation, yoga class, and a study group. So there's the beginning of a Buddhist centre here, and a lot of the people who are quite senior in Triratna Buddhist order now were kind of involved in this project. I was involved in a project similar. So I moved to Manchester in 1995, and I walked straight into a building project. So we converted a warehouse right in the centre of Manchester into the Manchester Buddhist Centre with like 5 floors, 14,000 square feet of building. So that took about nearly 2 years to convert. So the whole point behind all of this is, in terms of friendship, it's like moving away from those relationships that are, well, I suppose like you need a kind of real people often develop friendships by being sort of shoulder to shoulder with each other, and it's often kind of you're going through some sort of ordeal and come out the other side, and then there's a bond there. People talk about like wartime spirit, and maybe there's kind of a bit of a need for that. Well, maybe there is a bit of this going on at the moment, but it's like you come together, and there's a kind of intensity there, and there's a sense of purpose, and through that something gets melded or something. So my complicated diagrams. Here we go again. So at one point, I think it might have been Ratnaguna was talking about what are the most important aspects of a successful group or training session, and I kind of pulled out what those were, and so basically you've got things like warmth and trust, flow, awareness of direction, enjoyment, good dynamic, and benefits. So you get things like commitment, cooperation, taking each other into account, consensus decisions, ability to resolve conflict, everyone's views are heard. This is in a study group, but I think it's appropriate to any kind of working community or place where you're trying to cultivate friendship. A good balance of activities. In a study group, you'd have a logical progression of a theme. I suppose on a building project, it would be the purpose is maintained. You keep clear about what it is that you're trying to do. Awareness of direction. So in terms of what society is like, coming back to society, what society is like now. So Stuart Miller, he says the dehumanized quality of technology increasingly creeps into our very nature. The rise of reason as the dominant human function distances us from experience. At the start of modern culture, men began to admire machines and to try to imitate them. Large industrial organisations increasingly tended to treat workers like machines. High degrees of reliability, a tolerance for repetitiveness, a focus on work to the exclusion of nature or human feelings, all were held up as goals. Employees were not supposed to get tired or lose patience in their organisation charts, to get bored, to want variety. With more clever management and a relaxation of the harsher types of exploitation, human vagaries are presently allowed, but only allowed. We now imitate the computer. Our deepest image of ourselves becomes man as rational producer. This is men and friendship, so it's man and woman. Man and woman identify with mental processes, brain power. Society teaches us to separate from our emotional, physical and social nature and to behave according to the rules of a profession. Under such regulations, one performs increasingly limited rational operations, whether it is a matter of cutting up a body or a poem, a market profile or a mass of computations. Successful people in this system are able to perform reliably over a long period of time. Very successful people also manage somehow to preserve the outer shows of charisma, charm, magnetism, or whatever other qualities are conducive to being trusted and assigned leadership roles. In every case, however, the result is the same. One identifies with a socially cultivated mask, the essential character of which is its lack of human depth and most especially its lack of depth of feeling. Can people under such discipline be true friends? So in the face of such social forces as rationalism, professionalism, economic and physical mobility, and individualism, so these are all qualities of like Western society, all tending to destroy intimacy, modern people have attempted to substitute for the old tight fabric of relationships one relationship alone. Over the last 2 centuries, romantic love has come to be seen as something to which everybody, not just the rich person, is entitled. Moreover, romantic love, as a social historian Carl Degler has traced its evolution, has come to be seen as something one combines with marriage. Most people's imaginations have come to be dominated by the idea of a lifelong, exciting intimacy with one person of the opposite sex. That this expectation is not universally realised does not stop people from trying. Despite the high divorce rate, a far greater percentage of the American population marries now than ever before. So basically what happens is we're in this kind of technological society, materialist society. The values of kind of, romantic relationships quite high, and things like friendship, and just being a broader kind of human being than the role that you have in your job or whatever, kind of gets pushed to one side. And I've really noticed, like on American news, it's so just how the if you went back to the 1970s, there'd be a kind of more warmth there in the whole. You'd have Michael Parkinson interviewing people. There'd be less choice. There'd be less TV channels, but you'd have a certain amount of kind of warmth in things. Whereas now, like you look at American TV news, it's like kind of it's all glass and it's all just hard facts, and as if facts actually is what's convincing to us. It helps us in any way. What most people need is emotional connection, and what that brings. So these young idealists here in the order in the late 70s, this became Sangharakshita used to talk about establishing the nucleus of a new society, and the idea was that if you're going to transform society, you needed to start with yourself. That's very Buddhist. You start with yourself. If you want the world to be a kinder place, you start by trying to be kinder yourself, and you start by trying to be more cooperative yourself. And so Buddhist centres were sort of seen, centres, communities, and cooperatives. So you had what was set up with things called team-based right livelihood businesses or cooperatives. These were the 3 C's. Were sort of seen as the nucleus of a new society. So you'd live together, people would live together, people would work together, and people would try and kind of communicate Buddhism together to the public through setting up Buddhist centres. So over the years, the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order and the Western Buddhist Order, which then became Triratna Buddhist Community or Triratna Buddhist Order, which means 3 jewels. So it's just more the essential thing is the 3 jewels. The whole movement's gone through different phases. So in the early days, in these days I'm pointing to here, it was very much a case of setting up this nucleus of new society and trying to, in a way, protect it from the world outside, which would want to be pulling, which would pull on it really and distract it, So there was a sense of trying to keep a tight ship and stuff. And things did grow out of that and the idealism. And then there was a phase started maybe in the late 1980s where things had grown quite a bit, and then they started to be organised better, and sort of systematised. So ordination training became something that Subhuti and others sort of kind of set up all these retreats, and you had a system of organised. It was all better organised and everything. And in a way, the institutions were developed so that you start to get bigger centres being built, and warehouses being converted and that sort of thing. And a college of preceptors set up. And then in the 2000s, it's like that phase started to move over to one side more, and then you had a kind of more sort of lay phase happening. You had like Buddha field happening, which is more trying to reach kind of the traveller community and the new age community and that sort of thing, and things kind of got a bit like looser really. But like now you've got maybe they got a bit too loose. But now you've got, in a way, it's a bit like the earlier part. The coming back to first principles is kind of coming in more again. Like idealism. There's not so many people living in communities and that sort of thing. So there's a little bit of a nucleus of a new society happening again in the movement. There's a guy called Reginald Ray who's a Tibetan Buddhist, and he wrote a book called Buddhist Saints in India, and he talked about the not being like two types of Buddhists. Like people thought that there's the monks and then there's the lay people. He talked about a threefold model of three types of essential Buddhist practitioners. There was the people who lived in the forest renunciants, who lived in the forest and in a way were the meditators, and maybe they're the artists, the creative people are in touch with the vision. And then there's the settled monastics who in a way ran the Buddhist centres, who were the face of Buddhism to the world. And then the lay people, the lay practitioners. So those three aspects, in a way, are manifested within Triratna. The idealists at the beginning, and then the settled, organised preceptors and that side of thing, and then the Buddha field, the lay, more chaotic, but maybe kind of connected with the world. So it's like those three sides of things are kind of really important, and in a way we all need to be doing all three. We all need to be contacting sources of inspiration, and like in the forest renunciant, we need to be going on retreat. We need to be retreating into ourselves, into our dens and our sheds, and just kind of recouping our resources. And then we all need to somehow to be engaging with the world around, or with some sort of Buddhist kind of face toward some sort of institution in a way. So it's not good if the artist is just off on their own. They need to be coming in, and they need to be getting exhibitions in galleries so that the world can see what they're doing, that sort of thing. Um, and there needs to be a kind of lay aspect, which is like, people go to work, people have families, people are just in the world, and in the inverted commas the real world, as people say. But what happens when you're in the real world is that your inspiration gets ground down by those conditions that are pulling you away, pulling you back into like jobs that are just too rational, too professional, too limited, So we need to resist that as well by So I think the whole thing of like Samar Jiva, right life, has these aspects, these three aspects of inspiration, kind of institutions, and also kind of the work, being in the world, that also all need to be held in kind of balance within the individual. So I'll just finish with I really love the graphics on this. So this is a rota from I spent a couple of years working in Earth Cafe, which was set up by Vimla Bandhu, who's an Indonesian order member, a really lovely guy, and he had this vision for a vegan cafe underneath Manchester Village Centre, and it started as I remember he gave a talk on my ordination retreat in 1997 called "The Jewel in the Cabbage," and it's a pun on the jewel in the lotus. So the jewel in the lotus is a symbol for Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and Vimla Bandhu's jewel in the cabbage. It's like, how do you work with whatever ingredients you've got to make something that doesn't waste anything, so you don't chuck things away, you use them, but how do you make something healthy and beautiful out of whatever ingredients you've got? And he very much pulled on the ideas of Dogen, the Zen master Dogen, and his advice to the chef and that sort of thing. So that was 2 years of intensity there, that I worked in the cafe full time in a team of people, and I just learned to put out the energy. It's really hard work working in a cafe. Cafes are hard work, like washing up. And I remember Andy, one of the guys in the cafe, one day went, he just washed up for like 6.5 hours continuously. And he went, yeah, I did 6.5 hours. Yeah, there's there are conditions that do bring about that are places for friendship. And like more recently, last August, I got a job on a building site as a cleaner, and the Manchester Engineering Campus Development, which is a £300 million huge, great building, which is just engineering. It's going to be engineering, and it's like 6,000. It's going to have 6,000 students in it, and but what I've really enjoyed about that job is like just kind of going in. I clean a particular part. I clean the site manager's office, which has about 90 guys in it, and they're supervising maybe sort of 600 workers. But it's such a solid bunch of people. They just turn up. They're coming from all over the north of England, commuting in from Yorkshire and things to Manchester, work a long day, then go home again, and just that sense of people being responsible, turning up, being, just everyone's just dead friendly and just open doors for each other. When I go collect the cups in, they're all, everyone's just very kind and sort of gentle in a way. So I've had a real sense of friendship from those people at work, kindness and friendship, and that's really helped my energy, and I miss it in a way. But yeah, it doesn't feel like all that safe to go there at the moment. So yeah, so wishing them all well. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'm not quite sure what we're going to do tomorrow, but I hope you have a good day. Get into stay safe. Get all that body and mind. Get some nature. Get everything. Get all the different aspects of your psyche nourished. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to try and get to the park and in a safe way. And yeah, and see you tomorrow. Okay, thanks a lot.